UFC Fight Night, Paul Craig versus Brendan Allen in the main event this Saturday night from the UFC Apex. The UFC's been away from the Apex for, like 2 months now. And of course, they're going to return. I guess it's only been a month. They're going to return back to the Apex for the final Apex card of 2023. No need to fear, though. The UFC will be back in 2024, back in the Apex, because why not? You know, they're going to go back for the first card of 2024 because you can never get enough of the damn UFC Apex. But that's your main event, Paul Craig and Brendan Allen in the main event in the middleweight division. And folks, if you haven't yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more UFC here on the channel. Tomorrow we will have our Bellator 301 predictions in the main event of that card. Yaroslav Amosov taking on Jason Jackson for the welterweight championship. In the bantamweight division, you have the unification bout between Sergio Pettis and Patchy Mix, and then a lightweight Grand Prix fight between Alexander Chablis and Patricky Pitbull. I don't know if that's going to be the final Bellator card or not. They don't have another one scheduled, but I think they're going to keep going, But that's the Bellator card that we'll get to tomorrow night. So on to this 14-fight card here with the UFC. Going to start off here with Lucas Alexander taking on Jekka. For Lucas Alexander, 1-1 in the UFC, coming off a unanimous decision win over Steven Ocho Peterson in his last fight, and he'll be taking on his opponent here in Jekka, the Indonesian fighter, who is 13-3 and is coming off of a loss to Anheliger Jubilee, where Jubilee kind of just beat him up for 2 rounds. Jubilee was able to get takedowns. Jubilee was able to dominate on the ground, and Anheliger Jubilee, who's coming off a loss in his last fight to Mike Breden, Jubilee goes out there and beats him in the second round on that card in February of this year. For Jekka, he won back-to-back fights by finish early on the road to the UFC series they did over in Asia, but again, his grappling is not very good. He's taking on a guy here, Lucas Alexander, who though will strike with you. Alexander's 3 losses are all by submission. You're looking at the Joyers and Brito fight, his first fight in the UFC. He lost, early on in his career, rear naked choke loss, and then another one, his second loss. So he started off as 2-2 in his career. His 2 losses were by submission. That's what's hurt Alexander so far in his career. Coming off of, he got into the UFC after winning on Anthony Pettis FC, the first ever main event they had over there, where he went out and beat Jacob Kilburn, a former UFC name. Comes in the UFC, of course. He's 1-1. He fights at a Fusion XL over in Florida. But again, not the best grappling game out of Lucas Alexander. He has been subbed multiple times in the past. However, again, he's not taking on a guy that's really going to submit him. You're going to see a fighter in Jekka here who is going to try to go out there and swing with him as well. Both these guys, that's what they want to do. They've been beat before on the ground in the UFC. You got to assume that that's the type of fight we're going to get in this one. Is it somewhat of a low-level fight? Sure it is. It's not, the best UFC fight that you're going to get. But again, I don't feel great taking a guy in Jekka who just lost to Anheliger Jubilee and didn't look very good in that fight. And obviously, we just saw what happened to Jubilee in his next fight. I know he was probably up 2-0, but again, gets beat in that 3rd round. You see Lucas Alexander, yeah, he's 1-1 in the UFC. The win over Steven Peterson, though, is good. He knocks down Peterson in the 3rd round, where he really starts to take over, even though he won every single round in that fight. That 3rd round was the best for Lucas Alexander, and I think he wins the fight. I'm not impressed with Jekka at all. I think, Jekka's best chance to beat him is if he swings big and knocks him out, but really, I think Lucas Alexander as a whole is the way better way better striker. Grappling, I don't know. Both these guys are not very good on the ground. I think maybe you give Jekka an advantage, but both these guys are just not good grappling-wise. But on the feet, again, I think Lucas Alexander's way better. He's the way quicker striker. He's got more skills on the feet, and he's got more tools to beat Jekka than Jekka's got to beat him. Give me Lucas Alexander to pick up the win. I think he's going to get a finish. Lucas Alexander by 2nd round TKO, picking up his first finish win in the UFC. On to our next one. We will have a fight now between Charles Johnson, who is back for yet another fight, taking on Rafael Estevam. Estevam? Not entirely sure how to say his name, but Charles Johnson's back. He's, traded wins and losses so far in the UFC. He's taking on Rafael, who is 11-0 and coming off a win on the Contender Series in his last fight. Of course, this fight is going to be contested in the flyweight division, and you're looking at a fight here where on Tapology, people definitely taking Estevam here in this one. He's a Nova and Yao guy. 84% of voters going with him, 16% going with Charles Johnson. Johnson is 13-5, coming off back-to-back losses to both the Picasso of MMA, Ode Osborne, and then Cody Durden in the fight after that. Back-to-back decision losses for him. He comes into the UFC, drops a fight to Muhammad Mokaev. He is the reigning LFA champion coming into the UFC. Drops on to Mokaev, beats Joglas Jumagulov by split decision, beats Jimmy Flick. Again, Flick's washed. And then he wins back-to-back fights, loses back-to-back fights against Ode and Cody Durden. In the Durden fight, again, you detail what a Cody Durden fight is and how Cody Durden is most impactful it's going to be with his wrestling, and that's obviously how Durden beat Charles Johnson. The Ode Osborne fight was a fight contested on the feet. I thought Ode got the best of him. Ode got the scorecards. He did, grapple some as well. The Jamaican sensation Picasso, Ode Osborne ends up winning that fight. And again, Johnson is known for his striking. He hasn't been all that great grappling-wise. He's been beat on the ground multiple times in his UFC career. Ode Osborne took advantage when he needed to. Durden obviously did that. Mokaev did that. Zhagos Zhumagulov fight was on the feet. Jimmy Flick, again, was just not good enough to keep Charles Johnson down when they fought earlier this year in 2023. But it will be the fourth fight of 2023 for Johnson. He fought in January, February, then in April. Now, of course, taking till November to get his fourth fight in here. Against Rafael Estevam here, who is 11-0, coming off that win on the Contender Series last year, though, in 2022. He beat Joao Ellis by second round TKO. Wins before that in LFA and Shuto as well. Again, undefeated record so far for Estevam. He's 11-0 in his professional career. He was booked against Carlos Candelario in his first UFC fight. Fight fell through due to a Candelario injury. Then booked against Zhagos Zhumagulov in Newark. He couldn't make weight for the Zhumagulov fight, so now here he is against Johnson. You're probably going to see this one on the feet a lot. Estevam isn't, he's got skills in the ground, but I think you're probably going to see him try to strike a lot. But I think it'll be kind of similar to the Ode Osborne fight too, where if he needs to grapple, he can, go down there and get it done as well. You hate to see, Charles Johnson, who is 2-3 in the UFC, who's a very active guy, but you hate to see him on the verge of being cut if he does lose this fight. He'll be 2-4. 13-6 professional record. I think the UFC would keep him around for one more, and I'd like them to book him against a very low-level flyweight. I mean, I can't think of one off the top of my head at this point. Malcolm Gordon isn't great, I guess. I don't know. Actually, no, that's doing Malcolm Gordon a little bit of a disservice. I don't know. But, there's some low-level flyweights they can have Charles Johnson fight. I mean, Jimmy Flick, obviously, he already fought him. I know I could say Malcolm Gordon. Yeah, the winner of Malcolm Gordon, Jimmy Flick. There you go. Malcolm Gordon is on a 2-fight losing streak. I think that's a decent fight. Anyways, yeah, I think Estevam wins. I think he does. I think, again, it's similar to the Ode fight, where I think Estevam is better on the feet at times. And if he needs to, if he's getting beat on the feet, he can mix it up with the grappling too, like Ode Osborne did. And again, we have seen Charles Johnson go out there and get absolutely annihilated on the ground. Mokaev, he's stuck in that fight, but I mean, Durden was able to hold him down a lot. I think Estevam wins. I'm going to go by decision. I don't think he's able to get a finish, but I think he does beat Charles Johnson 3-0. So give me Estevam 30-27 on it. To our next one, we have a fight here between Trey Ogden and Nicholas Motta. I don't know why I thought this fight was already scheduled in the past. It just feels like these two guys have fought before. They haven't. But you got Motta and Ogden in this one. For Nicholas Motta, he is 1-2 in the UFC. Comes in his UFC debut, loses to Jim Miller. That's the fight, when Miller was going on his little run of knocking out a bunch of guys coming off the Contender, a bunch of guys making their UFC debuts. That was one of the fights that he won. He knocked out Motta. And for Trey Ogden, he is coming off of a loss to Ignacio Bahamondes, where he loses by unanimous decision. He was not able to get Bahamondes down, and Bahamondes obviously beat him up on the feet. His one win in the UFC is the Daniel Zellhuber win, which is a good win now looking back at it. He beat Zellhuber by unanimous decision. UFC debut spot, loses to Jordan Leavitt by split decision. We're going to talk about Leavitt later on in this card and why he's such a big underdog against Chase Hooper. We're going to talk about that fight more in depth. If you want to see it, I guess you just go down to the timestamps down below. But and real quick, while I'm at it, I forgot to mention this. I am recording this before the pay-per-view in New York City, before UFC 295. Just got to get ahead with uploading. So I don't know what happened. Is Yuri Prochazka the champion? Is Alex Pereira the champion? I don't know. Did Pavlovich win? Did Aspinall win? I don't know. Again, my prediction, I think, hopefully this ages well, I think Pavlovich wins, and I think Pereira wins. If you wanted to see more of that, just watch the UFC 295 video that was posted on the channel last week. But yeah, Ogden and Motta here. Again, Ogden's 1-2, known for his grappling, hasn't been able to get down there much, honestly, and have much success so far in his UFC run, so you have seen more of his striking. And for Nicholas Motta, 13-5 professional record, coming off a first-round knockout loss 5 months ago to Manuel Torres. All 3 of his fights have ended by finish, so it's really kill or be killed at this point for Motta, at least so it seems so far in the UFC. However, is Trey Ogden going to be the guy to knock him out? No, likely not. Ogden has not won a fight by knockout so far in his professional career. He's got 11 by submission, 5 by decision, but no finishes by knockout. He's been submitted 3 times, but again, no knockout losses and no knockout finishes. So again, Ogden does have the chin. He's able to stay in there. But again, looking for the grappling, however, has not seen that much success so far doing so in the UFC, but is able to mix it up on the feet as well. Now, Motta is not allowed to take down so far in the UFC. He's got a 100% takedown defense rate. However, I don't believe believe many guys have tried to take him down. I think, actually, I don't believe anyone's tried to take him down. I think he stuffed one takedown in the Contender Series. So, again, Motta's takedown defense really has not been tested so far yet. When you look at the odds for this fight, Nicholas Motta, minus 140 favorite, plus 120 for Trey Ogden. I'm actually going to go with the underdog here in this fight. I think Ogden is able to go out there and pick up the victory. I'm going to take him by decision. Again, I think Ogden's able to remain competitive enough on the feet. I like Ogden's chin. He was able to stand there for 15 minutes with a guy like Ignacio Bahamondes, who does have the power, but doesn't always showcase it at times. But I do like Ogden to stand there with Nicholas Motta, and I think he is able to get the takedown eventually. I think Ogden is able to showcase that grappling game that has, shown him a lot of success, at least outside the UFC, but so far in the UFC, there hasn't been much of that. Yes, I know he's been submitted before in the past. He got submitted by Nick Brown in LFA. He got submitted by Thomas Gifford in 2018, sure. But still, I think he is the way superior grappler in this fight. I think he is much better down there than what Motta is. And again, I don't think Motta is going to be able to finish him. I know he's got a knockout win over Cameron Van Camp, but Cameron Van Camp is now out of the UFC. It's a guy who came in, lost 2 fights, and now is gone and just lost in bare knuckle fighting. I don't think that win's all that great. Sure, Motta does have power, but everyone's got power. I think Ogden's able to stay in the fight. I think Ogden's able to mix it up a little bit on the feet and mix it up with the grappling as well. I think Ogden's able to pick up the win in this fight. Getting a second win in the UFC, I'm going to take Trey Ogden to win by unanimous decision. Up next, we have got a fight here in the women's 135-pound division. You've got Lucia Pudilova taking on Aline Perez. For Lucia Pudilova, obviously now in her second run in the UFC, 14-8 professional record, coming off her last fight where she did lose to Jocelyn Edwards by split decision, made her UFC return in the win over Wu Yannan. Pudilova now looking for this third fight here against Aline Perez, who I just noticed, seriously, her nickname's Nurmagomedov. What? Like, she's from Argentina. I mean, maybe I'm missing something here. I just saw this on Tapology. Aline Perez's nickname is seriously Nurmagomedov. It used to be Fiona, so maybe this is just a joke. I hope it's a joke, but it's probably real. I mean, she beats Ashley Evans Smith, and then she thinks she's got the nickname Nurmagomedov. Ashley Evans Smith is 6-6. Anyways, I don't understand. She trains out of Miami. I don't know. Okay, Lucia Pudilova, though, 14-8 again on that second UFC run. Got cut from the promotion after losing 4 straight fights to the likes of Irina Aldana, Liz Carmouche, Antonina Shevchenko, and now Bellator's own Justine Kish. Won 3 fights after that, loses 1 to Talita Bernardo, then wins 2 more in Octagon, gets the Wu Yannan fight in Utah, and goes out there and wins. Then loses to Jocelyn Edwards in a close fight by split decision. Again, Edwards outstruck her. It was Lucia Pudilova working the grappling game, working the wrestling. You can make the case 1 and 2 go to Pudilova, but again, first round didn't really do much damage. Second round did more than what Jocelyn Edwards did. Third round was a Jocelyn Edwards round because Pudilova was not able to take the fight down. And kind of feels that's what Pudilova has to do in this one. Again, she won in the Wu Yannan fight because of her grappling, was able to get the fight down, was very successful down there, ended up winning the fight by TKO on the ground. So you got to feel like that's what Pudilova is going to try to do. But Aline Perez, sure, she is a good wrestler. Now, I don't understand, I don't agree with the nickname Nurmagomedov, but 10 takedowns in her last fight against Ashley Evans Smith. She had 11 and a half minutes of control time in that fight, 127 total strikes in that one. Sure, that's great. But again, Ashley Evans Smith is not very good. She won a fight 30-25, gets the nickname Nurmagomedov. I don't understand it. But really, again, that's not the best win because Ashley Evans Smith hasn't won a fight in the UFC in years. Before that, Perez loses the fight to Stephanie Egger where she gets submitted in the second round. Now, no fighter nicknamed Nurmagomedov should be getting submitted in the UFC against a non-top 15 fighter in Stephanie Egger. But again, it does remain true. The better grappler is going to win this fight. The better wrestler is going to win this fight. Whoever can remain on top in this fight and can keep top positioning should be able to win this fight because that's essentially what both these fighters want to do. I haven't seen much out of Aline Perez's striking game, I'll be honest. Lucia Pudilova striking game isn't actually horrible. We've seen her go head, we've seen her go head on against Irina Aldana in the past, win fight of the night, lose a split decision, but that was just a striking fight. So we have seen Pudilova go in there and strike, but we've also seen her go in there and get submitted by, fighters like Antonina Shevchenko, who's not the best grappler. It was Pudilova getting a takedown. She got reversed. Shevchenko gets the back. That was in the Prudential Center over in Newark, New Jersey in 2019. It's a very weird fight to pick. I'm actually going to go with Aline Perez here. I was trashing her for the nickname of Nurmagomedov, but I'm actually going to take our second underdog already on this card. I think Perez wins. I think she's able to ground Pudilova. Again, if you're getting beat by Antonina Shevchenko down there, I think Perez is able to see some success as well. However, again, it's all dependent on who gets that takedown. I honestly think Perez's pure wrestling is slightly better, though. I think her wrestling is going to pull through in this fight. Striking-wise, I do like Pudilova, so I think Perez will be the one trying to initiate the grappling a lot because I think she will be getting beat on the feet. But I think Perez is able to pick up the victory. I think her grappling, again, is better than Pudilova. I think wrestling's better. I'm going to go with Aline Perez, Nurmagomedov Perez. What are we doing? To win the fight by unanimous decision. We move on now to our next fight, which will be contested in the heavyweight division. We have got Parkin taking on Caio Machado in this fight. For Parkin, 1-0 in the UFC, picking up that win over in the UK over Jamal Pogues in his first fight in the promotion, taking on the UFC newcomer here in Caio Machado. Parkin a huge favorite in this one. Machado is coming off of his win on the Contender Series, where he basically just pitched a shutout in 2023, August 8th, went in there and just absolutely dominated the guy he was fighting. 121-17 was the significant strike count. His opponent really looked to take him down, and he just wasn't able to. So Machado went on there and really just dominated the fight. Was not a great fight, honestly, but it was just one-sided. It wasn't the best Contender Series fight. But again, everyone gets a contract, now in the Contender. So Machado's in the UFC, taking on Parkin, who goes from fighting in a sold-out O2 arena to fighting in the UFC Apex. Again, you look at the Jamal Pogues fight, he looked good. I mean, it's just kind of I had to say low level. I think I'm going to classify Jamal Pogues as a low-level heavyweight. I think the loser of this fight should join the ranks of, Andrei Arlovsky, who is now unfortunately a low-level heavyweight, but they can join the Andrei Arlovskys of the world, the Parker Porters, the, Chase Sherman's not in the UFC anymore, but Josh Parisian, Dante Almeida just lost. No, wait, did he win? Wait. No, he lost to Nascimento, so yeah, he's back down, right? Like, those guys are the low-level heavyweights. I think the loser of this fight is a low-level heavyweight. Now, I think we're anticipating it to be Caio Machado. I'll just get it out the way because, again, Parkin did look good. He was able to, beat Pogues to the punch every single time in that fight. I think, again, he's the way superior striker. Machado, sure, he did go out there and did look good in his Contender Series fight, but what is there other than that prior to that fight? Not much. His regional fights haven't been all that great. He's been fighting in BFL, which is a fight league over up north in British Columbia. He was the champion over there, but he's the champion fighting 11-16 guys. I honestly don't remember the last really good fighter to come out of BFL. I don't know. I honestly can't think of one off the top of my head because I don't think. Okay, I don't think, did Buller come out of there? I don't think so. Yeah, honestly, I can't tell you really good fighters come out of BFL. So Caio Machado is really their biggest guy, I guess. He was taking on 11-15 guys for the World Championship, the regional championship in BFL. Just comes to show you really the, that promotion he was in, which is not really fault of his own, but it's just, you build guys up to get their shot in the Contender, they win in the Contender, and boom, now they're in the UFC, right? You come into the Contender with a really good record, you look good on that one fight, then now you're a UFC fighter. However, for Caio Machado, I think he just gets beat up here. I think Parkin's the way better striker in this one, and sure, we didn't really get to see the power on display in his fight against Jamal Pogues, but we have seen that, at least in his fights previous to the Contender Series, which in all fairness, Parkin's fights before the UFC aren't good either. I mean, he's fighting guys who are 6-9, he's fighting in the Rise and Conquer promotion over in England. It's a horrible promotion. I mean, they've got a guy, his last fight in this Rise and Conquer promotion, the co-main event's a fighter who's 11-6, Louis Monarch. He's beating a 26-85-1 opponent. Yeah, these regionals aren't very good. However, Parkin has shown in back-to-back fights in the Contender and in the UFC that he's able to go out there and perform. The win in the Contender Series was a win by rear naked choke, so he has shown the grappling ability as well. Don't think this one hits the mat. I think it's a striking fight. I think Parkin wins. I am a little bit concerned with Machado because I don't know really what we're going to get out of him. Nickname's Bigfoot. Great. I think Parkin's going to win. I'm going to opt the route of a boring decision. I hate to pick it, but that's what I'm going to pick. It's a UFC Apex fight. Both these guys are going to feel like they're in a sparring match. I think Parkin wins. I don't think he really gets too ahead of himself. I don't think he's really going to hunt the knockdown, so he just kind of goes in there and just, pieces up Machado on the feet using his jab, kind of the same way he beat Jamal Pogues. I think Parkin wins, and I don't really think it's all that great, but I think Parkin goes to 2-0 in the UFC with a victory over Caio Machado. Oh, voice crack. Oh, damn. God, I haven't done that in a while. That was really bad. On to the next one. We have got a fight here between Cesar Almeida and Christian Leroy Duncan. For Almeida, only 4-0 so far in his professional career. He's going the Alex Pereira route of not fighting much before his UFC run, but he's taken on 8-1 Christian Leroy Duncan. Excuse me, I want to call him Chris Leroy Duncan all the time, but Christian Leroy Duncan is coming off his first loss in his professional career. It's lost to Armand Petrosyan by unanimous decision. Prayers up to Petrosyan, who got food poisoned over in Sao Paulo because he was going to fight Rodolfo Vieira. Don't know what goes on in that country. That's a joke. Anyways, hopefully you don't see any fighters over there trying to feed a bus a carrot. Shout out the Nogueira brothers. But Christian Leroy Duncan, 1-1 in the UFC, comes in, beats Dusko Todorovic in his first fight in the promotion. That was expected. He goes up there and knocks out Dusko in the first round. Todorovic had a really good start to his UFC career and then really just didn't really do much after that. So he beats Todorovic in his first fight, and now here he is, dropping a fight in his last one. Competitive fight, kind of, against Armand Petrosyan, but Petrosyan kind of said there was levels to this and kind of just sent Christian Leroy Duncan back down to the ex-Contender Series guy rank. Seriously. Goes out there, just kind of outstrikes him. Petrosyan keeps the fight in the feet, takes him down in the third, but really wins the first 2 rounds on the feet. I think he pitches a complete shutout in that one. I think Petrosyan wins 3-0, if I'm being honest. You look at Cesar Almeida. This is a guy who's 4-0. He's a kickboxer. He's a glory kickboxer. And, let's just look at what he's done outside the UFC. He's fought Alex Pereira before. He lost to Pereira twice in 2013 and 2015. So, again, that's why I said the Alex Pereira route. But he beats Lucas Fernando in his one fight in the Contender Series. He's a plus 220 dog. He goes out there, is able to keep the fight standing for the most part. Fernando goes 3 for 10 on his takedowns. He does have 5 minutes of control, but Almeida's able to go out there and get control in his own right. He's able to reverse positioning once in the first round, which showed that he's not a horrible grappler. And Almeida, again, the kickboxing is really good as well. Again, 2 fights with Alex Pereira in 2013 and 2015. Did lose both those by unanimous, or I believe it was a unanimous decision. But is a former glory kickboxer as well. When you look at the MMA fights, however, they're not impressive. First fight over in Shuto, 2016, beats a fighter making their pro debut. Fine with that. Next fight, 0-0, fine with that. Third fight, this is where it gets concerning. Third fight in 2021, Danilo Souza, 5-28 record. You rather just see the pro debut at that point. Beats him by knockout in 45 seconds. This guy, though, is now 6-32. He has picked up a win since. Good for him, I guess. So that's concerning. Again, the levels of competition aren't great. Almeida is 35 years old. I believe when Dana signed him, he said, I'm not looking to sign 35-year-olds, but I'm going to sign you anyway because we signed everybody now in the Contender Series. He couldn't sign Kevin Holland when Holland was first in the Contender. He couldn't sign Chris Curtis when he was first in the Contender, but we can sign everybody now. It's fine. You get more cards, I guess, and you get more UFC fighters. Which do we want? I don't know. Apex cards aren't great, but he beats Lucas Fernando, who at one point was considered pretty solid because he is the LFA middleweight champion. I believe he would go back to being the LFA middleweight champion. He's going to defend his championship in December, right? So that is a good one for Almeida and does show you, okay, he is pretty solid. We might see Leroy Duncan attempt some takedowns. He tried 3 in his fight against Petrosyan, didn't get any of them. Honestly, I do like the grappling game out of Almeida. He showed that he is able to remain solid defensively grappling in that fight against Fernando, who is an LFA champion, who's the current LFA champion. I know Christian Leroy Duncan's a guy who's coming over from Cage Warriors. I know he does have experience in his own right. I know he's the former Cage Warriors champion. He won by finish every single time. However, is he able to finish Almeida? I don't know. Now, I think, again, you will see Leroy Duncan try to go out there and grapple, sure. But I think Almeida is actually able to keep this fight standing. I'm going to put some eggs in the Almeida basket. That pause, but still, I'm going to invest some in Almeida here, and I think Christian Leroy Duncan is not able to take him down, or at least not able to hold him down effectively, so I don't think he's going to be able to submit him. Now, I could be wrong, and Duncan can go out there and submit him right away in the first round, or just absolutely annihilate him with ground and pound on the ground. However, I don't really think that Duncan's able to dominate on the feet. Again, former glory kickboxer, maybe I'm putting too much into this, but still, I think Almeida is a decent enough kickboxer to the point where he's going to be able to beat Leroy Duncan on the feet. So I'm going to actually take the underdog based on Tapology. Is he underdog on the odds? Yeah, I'm going to take another underdog. We're going to go 3 underdogs so far. Again, I usually don't pick many underdogs because I'll be honest, I just pick who I think is going to win the fight. But again, I'll pick underdogs if I think they're going to win the fight. I'm picking another underdog. I'm going to take Cesar Almeida. I'm going to take Cesar Almeida to win the fight by decision. I think he just out-kickboxes Duncan. I don't think Duncan's able to take him down, and I think it's going to be a tough fight for Christian Leroy Duncan if he's not able to find a takedown. So Cesar Almeida wins by unanimous decision. On to the next. We've got Chad Anheliger, who is an underdog against Jose Johnson. I don't feel great about a lot of these odds, really. I think there's a lot of good play for a lot of these underdogs. I feel like this fight should be more of an even fight. Now, again, I am recording this on Thursday afternoon, so when this video comes out on Sunday, sure, maybe the odds have swung a little bit, but at least on Thursday, there's some really good play that you can get on a lot of these guys. But Anheliger is a guy who's 1-1 in the UFC, is coming off a loss to Almeida in his last fight, which is all right. He's coming off his, before that UFC debut, win over Jesse Strader. Strader's not the greatest UFC fighter. Sure, he goes over there and knocks him out in the 3rd round. But the Contender Series win over Munin Gafarov, and before that, the win in Rise FC, handing Brady Heastand his first loss. Like, sure, Anheliger's one UFC fight hasn't been great, but the guys he's beat outside the promotion haven't been all that bad, right? So Anheliger is coming off of those 3 fights, sure, and then he's going to be taking on his opponent here in Jose Johnson, who's 15-8, who has traded wins and losses. His first fight in the UFC, he gets twistered by Timon Blackshear. He takes the fight on short notice, and Blackshear goes out there and again puts him in a twister and submits him. His fight in the Contender Series, he's got 2 of them. In 2020, he loses to Ronnie Lawrence, but he gets dominated on the ground, and then Jack Cartwright goes out there and tried to wrestle Jose Johnson, but Johnson made the most out of the striking game in that fight and wins the fight 30-27 on one card, 29-28 in the others. Again, Cartwright wasn't really able to do much when the fight wasn't on the ground. Now, Anheliger is not the guy that's going to grapple, though. That's the thing, because both these guys have seen the same approach from their opponents as of late. Johnson's opponents are going to try to go out there and grapple him. Same can be said about Anheliger, and basically that's going to cancel each other out in this fight. I think both these guys aren't really known for their grappling. Anheliger's been submitted 5 times. Jose Johnson's been submitted 4 times. Both these guys will not be very good against grapplers and wrestlers. Again, we've seen it already in the UFC. We saw it with Anheliger against Altang Ali. You saw it with Jose Johnson against Timon Blackshear and against Ronnie Lawrence on the Contender Series. These guys are not looking to grapple. They're looking to strike, which should make for an exciting fight. But again, is there a championship future? Is there top 15 or even top 20 future for either of these guys? There's not. This is just a fight to fill time on the UFC Apex cards, and we'll see what we can get. Jose Johnson's always been a guy who's just been there, I guess, in Fury FC. He's had a million fights over there. His biggest win by far is the Mo Miller win. He goes out there and beats Miller. Miller at the time was undefeated, was likely going to be in the UFC if he could beat Jose Johnson. Instead, he loses to Jose Johnson, wins a fight after that in Fury, then drops back-to-back fights in Fury FC to Josh Weems and John Yanis. And then now he's getting a fight against Usama Rahman, the same guy who beat Vince Murdoch once upon a time, I believe, right? Yeah, this guy, okay, real quick, I'm going to get on this quick side note. This guy, Usama Rahman, is fighting Ultimate Fighter guy, Vince Murdoch. He's 2-7 going into the fight. He submits Murdoch in the first round. Loses 2 fights after that, but then wins 2, loses 1, wins another. So now he's 6-10, and he's going to fight Mo Miller in December. I mean, I think Mo Miller is going to kill him, but still, just something interesting. I just remember that name because Vince Murdoch lost that. Does Vince Murdoch still fight? I don't think he does. Yeah, I don't know if I'd fight after losing to a 2-7 guy after being on the, on the cusp of being in the UFC. He was a fight away. If he beat Heastand, he would have been in. He also got a fight against Luis Saldana on the Contender Series before that as well. However, Mo Miller, lost to Johnson. That's how I got on my little tangent there. But that was his best win. He gets the shot in the Contender, then, here we are, right? He's a good striker. He's going to throw with power. So you're going to see a striking fight out of both these guys. Both these guys are going to be more than willing to engage in a striking fight. It's just a matter of who you like better on the feet. I'm going to take Jose Johnson. I think Johnson's striking game is slightly better. Will we see a knockout from him? I think we kind of will. Again, I think something's got to give after 15 minutes of these guys striking. Someone eventually will go down. I think Jose Johnson is going to get the win by second round TKO. Now, I think Anheliger actually does have more power. I'm going to say that. Anheliger is the better power striker. However, I think Johnson's able to pick his spots better. I don't think Anheliger is going to hit Johnson as many times as Johnson is going to hit him. And I think Jose Johnson is going to win the fight. I'm going to take him to win by second round TKO. Again, I think he'll be able to avoid the big power shots of Chad Anheliger. And Jose Johnson is going to pick up the win, I think, again, way quicker. And he's got more skills on the feet. So give me Jose Johnson to win by second round TKO. On to our next fight here. Again, there's 14 of them, so we're going to go for a while here. Good fight, buried in the undercard. JSP taking on Joanderson Brito, Jonathan Pearce, obviously JSP is on a damn roll. This is a guy who should be looked at in the top 15 very soon. Same with Joanderson Brito. If he's able to pick up the victory, he's 3-1 as Brito. JSP in the UFC is 5-1. This is a tremendous fight again on the undercard. When you look at what Jonathan Pearce has been able to do in the UFC, he's only lost one fight. It's to Joe Lozon in Boston on a Friday night in 2019. What happened in that fight, I don't know. Lozon goes out there and beats him. Well, I do know what happened. Lozon got him down and just started raining on ground and pound and wins the fight in the first. But since then, again, JSP has come back. That was his first fight in the UFC. Maybe nerves get to him. Beats Kai Kamaka III, beats Omar Morales, beats Christian Rodriguez, beats Makwan Amirkhani, beats Darren Elkins. It has been about 11 months since we have seen him in the octagon, which you'd like to see more activity out the guy. But he's back after 11 months, taking on Joanderson Brito, who is 3-1, and this guy is decent, more than decent. Now, he's coming off a win over Weston Wilson. Now, is Weston Wilson a UFC guy? I don't know. Wilson will be taking on Gabriel Santos in 2024 in the Apex. I don't know. Again, how good is the Weston Wilson win? I don't know. The Lucas Alexander win, good. Beats Mary Naked Choke. Beats Andre Feely before that. And Brito's got power. This guy, I mean, just look at the guy at first. But yeah, he's got a lot of power on the feet, especially for a guy who, again, I mean, the guy weighs 145 pounds and he's got damn power on the feet. And it's going to be a tough test for JSP. You know what Jonathan Pearce does really well, though? He grapples and he really mixes up his striking game and his wrestling. But really, it's going to be the wrestling that's going to get guys. And again, it will be the combination of both that's going to catch up to a lot of fighters. Joanderson Brito's got a squeeze on that guillotine choke, though. He does. He's got a squeeze in the guillotine choke. Saw that before his run in the UFC. Big win in Future FC in 2019. He's got a squeeze on that. The rear naked choke win over Lucas Alexander. Again, he is a powerful guy who is going to try to submit you if you try to take him down or if you try to play around with him a little bit on the ground. That's why this fight's so interesting, because on the feet, again, JSP is not necessarily the power guy, but he's able to do well striking. But again, Brito's got that one-shot knockout power that can put guys out. It's a really entertaining fight, which I believe is still on the undercard of this fight night card, which makes absolutely no sense to me. I don't understand why it is, because again, you got Pearce, who's 5-1 on a 5-fight winning streak in the UFC, and Brito's on a 3-fight winning streak. Both these guys lost their UFC debuts, and they've won every single fight since. Brito's loss is going to be to Bill Algeo. Close fight, loses by decision. Sure, Algeo's pretty solid in his own right. But again, Brito's got the power. But Pearce is a better technical striker, I think. And then on the ground, again, you like Pearce's ground game, but Brito's got the jiu-jitsu and the power and the strength down there as well. It's a really interesting fight. You look at the odds for this one. You got Joanderson Brito at +125. You got Jonathan Pearce at -150. Again, I've taken a lot of underdogs on this card. I'm not going to take one here, though. I'm not going to fade away from a guy in Jonathan Pearce here, who has won 5 in a row and looking again like he's going to be a potential top 15 name very quickly. He should be in the top 15 if he wins this fight, or he should be at least getting a top 15 name. Taking Jonathan Pearce to win this one, I think he wins it by decision. Again, I think all around, he avoids the big power shots out of Joanderson Brito. You know you're going to see it. Brito is going to swing big. I think if Pearce is able to capitalize when Brito swings big over the top, Pearce just can duck and just go straight for a takedown. I think that's going to be a moment in this fight that you are going to see. I think, again, in that spot, if Brito's swinging, if Brito swings and misses with a hook, Pearce can go for the takedown. Not going to be enough time for Brito to lock in a guillotine choke on the way in, because that is how Brito, to a certain extent, does defend takedowns. He defends him with the guillotine choke. That's what some guys do. It's not always successful, but again, that's how he's going to try to defend it. If Pearce is able to catch him off guard when he's throwing a shot, when he's throwing a kick or throwing a punch, it's going to be a big opportunity for Pearce to take advantage. I think that's really where he gets going. And again, if you can get Brito at that first round, you're going to have a lot of success. I think JSP wins. I'm going to go Jonathan Pearce to win this fight by unanimous decision. On to our next one. We've got a fight here, which apparently is on the main card, which I don't know why this is on the main card over the fight that we just had. And there's another fight that's going to be on the main card later, which I don't understand either. But this is on the main card. Uros Medic taking on Johnny Parsons in this one. For Medic, coming off of the biggest win of his career, obviously, the win over Matthew Semmelsberger. I didn't think that was going to happen. UFC 291 at Salt Lake City, Utah. There was one fight in that card I did not get right. It was that one fight. I got every single one on that card right, except for this one. I didn't think Medic was going to go out there and beat Semmelsberger, because Semmelsberger drops him earlier in the fight. In the first round, you're thinking, okay, Semmelsberger is going to start to coast. Second round's close. Third round, Medic really takes over and eventually just drops him, spinning back elbow and finishes him. So Uros Medic, who is the biggest fan of the Joe Rogan podcast, is back, and he's taking on Johnny Parsons, who is 9-3 and coming off of one win in the UFC. It's against Danny Roberts. Now, Danny Roberts had an interesting tail end to his UFC career. really struggled a lot, lost 3 in a row. I believe the PFL signed Tom Breese, not Danny Ige. Danny Roberts. But again, Roberts beats Ramzan Emeev by split decision, then lose to Francisco Trinaldo, lose to Jack Della Maddalena, and then lose to Johnny Parsons. I don't believe Roberts is still in the UFC, 7-7 in the promotion, but I think they cut him. I'm not sure. Maybe he's still around, but he's 36 years old. I don't think the UFC would hold on to him for very much longer. But again, Parsons is only fighting the UFC, end of the second round, drops Danny Roberts and knocks him out. He picked up 2 knockdowns in that second round. The first round, he probably loses, actually. Roberts probably picks up the first, but Parsons eventually finds the knockout in the second round. And that's kind of what Parsons is going to go out there and try to do. I mean, his nickname is the Slugger Knot for a reason. He's going to try to go out there and he's going to try to swing big. So there's potential, again, for a Parsons knockout if he's going to win playing by knockout, because that's how he's probably going to get the finish. But again, Uros Medic is all around, I think, the better fighter. Fighting out of Anchorage, Alaska, originally from Serbia. This is a guy, again, 3-1 in the UFC, the only loss being to Jalen Turner. Well, Jalen Turner is a top 10 guy who arguably should have got a nod against Mateusz Gamrot, who Mateusz Gamrot is, might be fighting Charles Oliveira next, or fighting, Gagey or someone in a number 1 contenders fight. Because why Makhachev's got to wait till May to fight, I don't know why. But Medic's a guy, again, 1 loss to Jalen Turner. The wins, before the Semmelsberger fight, you're like, all right, the guy doesn't really have a huge win in the UFC. Well, Semmelsberger is that win. The other wins, both knockout finishes of Arlan Cruz and Omar Morales. Medic has a knockout win in every single win he's got in the UFC, plus the Contender Series as well. Medic is going to throw. I mean, this is a guy, again, who's got big power on the feet, 100% finish rate so far in his professional career. Johnny Parsons does have 2 decisions. The one decision, most recent decision, being a split decision victory over Solomon Renfro in the Contender Series by split decision. Renfro's a guy who made a name in the PFL, who just got in the playoffs, lost to Magomed Karamov, but Magomed Karamov is very good. We'll see what he does against Sada Busi in a couple weeks. We'll talk about that card in more detail. But yeah, Renfro's a solid guy who's on the PFL roster, and Parsons beats him by split decision. So with this fight with Medic and Parsons, I think Medic is better than I think Medic is going to win. I think he's going to pick Parsons apart in this fight. Just because, again, I think Parsons is going to swing big, and I think Medic, again, is the all-around better technical fighter. It's not to say he doesn't have power in his own right, and sure, we have seen Medic dropped before, like Semmelsberger did in his last fight, but I think Medic is the all-around way better striker in this one. I think Parsons will look for the kill early, and I think it's going to cost him, because I think, again, as we keep going into that second round, Medic is going to continue to get better. You might see Parsons even win that first round, but as the fight develops, I think Medic is going to be the way better fighter. So give me Uros Medic to win the fight by second round TKO. On to our next one. We have got Luana Pinheiro taking on Amanda Ribas in this fight. Ribas, a pretty sizable favorite in this one, around -300 range, taking the fellow Brazilian here in Pinheiro. Don't know why they just didn't throw this fight on the Brazil card a couple weeks ago. But here we are. Pinheiro is coming off a split decision victory over Michelle Waterson Gomez. Now, did she really beat Michelle Waterson, which is a crazy statement because, Waterson, isn't great at this point in her career, obviously. But, Pinheiro, basically, I thought lost that fight. I really thought she did. Because Waterson goes up there, wins the first, drops the second. I thought she won the third. And, they gave the decision to Pinheiro in Miami. I don't really like that. She's 3-0 in the UFC. The wins, first one, illegal upkick victory over Randa Marcos. I mean, you're getting a DQ win over Marcos, who at the time was 10-10-1, who's now 11-11-1 because she beat Lavinia Souza in her last fight. I believe she got cut from the UFC after a win, but I mean, 11-11-1. What are we supposed to do with this? Right? Pinheiro, wins 3 in a row though in the UFC. The Sam Hughes win. Sam Hughes is 5-3. They gave her Michelle Waterson as a step up, but I thought Waterson won the fight. Waterson being washed as she is, again, losing her last one to Marina Rodriguez on a 4-fight losing streak, sure. But still, I don't think Pinheiro is very good. I thought she lost, and Waterson beat her, and now they're giving her Amanda Ribas, which I feel like this is just a way from them to get Ribas a win. She's coming off a loss to Macy Barber, fight that she's a pretty big favorite in a couple months ago in the summer. She loses it. I thought Ribas was going to win. She didn't. She fought Viviane Araújo before that. She beat Araújo, lost to Caitlin Kuchagan. Before that, beat Vina Jianjihoba, and then before that was a fight against Marina Rodriguez, where if she won, she would likely get a title shot. Didn't do that, obviously. She had all of that momentum after beating Paige Van Zandt over in Abu Dhabi back in 2020. Yeah, Ribas is way better. Ribas is the much better striker. Pinheiro, again, was getting beat on the feet by Michelle Waterson, right? Ribas, even though she was getting beat striking-wise against Macy Barber, has shown to beat strikers such as Viviana Araújo. She outstruck Vina Jandiroba, which isn't saying much. She arguably beat Kaylin Kuchagian, right? She's the way better striker. And on the ground, too, Ribas is better as well, I believe. I know Pinheiro's got 5 wins by submission, but really hasn't been able to showcase much of that other than the random Marcos fight. Sam Hughes, sure, she took her down twice. She knocked down Sam Hughes, but I'm not putting any stock into a victory over Sam Hughes. I'm just not doing it. Hughes is still in the UFC, by the way. She's 8-5 now. She beat Jacqueline Amorim in her last one. Didn't think she was going to beat Amorim, but she did. Again, low-level strawweight fighting. It is what it is. Ribas, though, is way better than Pinheiro. Again, it's crazy that I'm even mentioning Pinheiro in the low-level heavyweight ranks in a fight against Amanda Ribas, where if she wins, she's going to get in the rankings. But no, Ribas is way better striking-wise. I don't think we even see this one hits the mat, because if it does, or if Pinheiro tries to, I think Ribas is going to keep the fight standing. I think she'll stuff the takedowns. And for Pinheiro, or I think for Ribas, I don't think she's even going to try to shoot against Pinheiro, because I think Pinheiro's jiu-jitsu is decent enough to the point where you'd rather strike with her. So give me Amanda Ribas to win. It feels like an easy pick. Ribas back down at 115 pounds. She's going to win the fight by unanimous decision. She's been fighting at 125. The cut back down to 115. Yeah, I think she wins. It's her first fight at 115 since 2021 against Jandiroba. She's going to win the fight. Ribas gets it done by unanimous decision. On to our next one. Who thought this was a good idea to put this on the main card? Obviously, the UFC is really high, I guess, on Peyton Talbott here. Talbott 6-0, coming off his win in the Contender Series against Reyes Cortez. Talbott now fighting. He's going to be taking on Nick Aguirre in this one. Nick Aguirre. I don't even I forgot this dude fought in the UFC. I'll be honest with you. Aguirre lost to Dan Argueta in his first fight in the UFC back in January. I'll be honest, I was in Disneyland during that card. So I vaguely remember watching this in the line for Space Mountain. I don't remember exactly where I was. I remember I was actually in line for Space Mountain for the Sean Strickland fight. That doesn't really apply to anything here, but it was on the same card. Anyways, he loses to Dan Argueta. Argueta just beats him up on the ground, really. I mean, he throws up a submission at one point, but really it's just one-sided domination for Argueta in that fight. This fight seems like the same exact thing, one-sided domination. However, it seems like that on the feet this time. I don't think Aguirre is very good. Again, this is a guy who was fighting in Coliseum Combat was his regional that he was fighting in. I've never heard of that, and I know a lot of regional MMA. I've never heard of Coliseum Combat. I guess they're an Indiana-based regional. So the last 4 cards have been canceled. They do fights in Lafayette and Maryville, Indiana. I have never heard of this, and I'm in Indiana right now. I don't what? I don't. Where did they find this guy? I think that was the question when he fought Argueta, because Argueta was like a minus 600 favorite. I don't know where they got this guy from. Talbott is way better. Now, is he very green and unproven? Sure. He hasn't had many fights. He's only 6-0, but he was fighting a lot in Uriah Faber's, promotion. Uriah Faber's A1 combat is what they call it specifically. 3 fights over there, 3 knockouts. His last one, a really good win over a guy for the A1 championship, bantamweight championship. That's a lot to say. Christian Rivas, he goes out there and beats Rivas, a guy who's pretty solid in his own right, who I believe is going to be fighting for the vacant championship in Uriah Faber's next card next week, or this week actually. So Talbott, and his fight in the Contender Series was good. The win over Reyes Cortez, back and forth fight on the feet, but Talbott, again, it gets the better of him, drops the first round, but then comes back and wins the next 2. I think Talbott wins the fight. I think he's way better than Nick Aguirre on the feet, and that's really all I have for this fight. I think he's got more power. I think he's way more of an elusive striker. I'm not high on Nick Aguirre at all. I think Peyton Talbott wins the fight by first round knockout. Let's get it up on over with. I think Aguirre probably gets cut from here. So let's keep it moving. Next fight, this is what I was talking about earlier. Chase Hooper being a minus 245 favorite against anybody is absolutely insane. I don't understand. It's crazy. I don't know whose idea it was to make Chase Hooper this big of a favorite. And it's not like he's fighting like a UFC newcomer. Jordan Leavitt has won fights in the UFC. He fought Paddy Pimblett. I know he lost. I thought he was going to beat Pimblett. Well, no, actually, I think I picked Pimblett. I wanted Leavitt to win. Yeah, I picked Pimblett. I wanted Leavitt to win. But that's besides the point. Jordan Leavitt's won fights in the UFC. He's 4-2 in the UFC. And he's a plus 200 underdog to Chase Hooper. Now, Chase Hooper's been around. He's a funny guy to follow on Twitter. I like Chase Hooper. But again, as a guy, as someone who has watched every single Chase Hooper fight in the UFC, there's no reason he should be this big of a favorite. Chase Hooper blocks punches with his face. That's what he does. I'll just be honest with you. He looked good in his last fight, but he beats Nick Fiore. Who is Nick Fiore? He beats Fiore by unanimous decision. Fiore is a guy who I don't believe has fought in the UFC since. He's out of the UFC already. He fought Rombecki and then lost to Hooper, and now he's gone. Sure, Chase Hooper swarmed him, absolutely beat the crap out of him on the feet. That's great. But a win over a guy who's 0-2 in the UFC, who's already been cut, should not justify you being this big of a favorite. Now, I think I kind of understand why people want to pick Hooper so much, is because I think his grappling's better than Jordan Leavitt. I don't think so. I think Jordan Leavitt's got the way better grappling game in this fight. The Monkey King, say what you want about the guy, he's an interesting guy. I think Leavitt's got way more tools down there. And I really think, did I mess up the odds? Because I feel like Leavitt should be the favorite here, but I think I got it right. I did that once a couple weeks ago. No, yeah, Chase Hooper is a minus 250 favorite. I might just put some on Leavitt right now. I mean, like, what are we doing? I usually wait until the week of the fight, but like, why? I don't understand. Hooper's still green. He's only 24 years old. Sure, he's young in his career, but like, man, he's going to be the much bigger fighter in this fight, which, yeah, he's going to be 6'1". Leavitt's going to be 5'9". But yeah, Jordan Leavitt's coming off that win over Victor Martinez where he knocks him out in the first round. I didn't see that coming, the knockout coming. I thought he was going to beat Martinez. I thought he was going to submit him, but I didn't think he was going to knock him out. Loses to Paddy Pimblett, beats Trey Ogden, beats Matt Sales, beats Matt Wyman. Sure, the wins aren't over the greatest UFC names other than Ogden, I would say. I think Ogden's is one really good win. But like, okay, who has Chase Hooper beat? Nick Fiore, Peter Barrett, Daniel Tamor, Felipe Colares. I think Colares, I was gonna say maybe Colares still in the UFC. No, none of those guys in the UFC still. So at least Leavitt's got a win over a guy in the UFC. I think Leavitt's the better grappler. I think Leavitt's the better striker too. Leavitt just won by knockout in the first round in his last fight. I think Leavitt's way better, and hear me out. I think Jordan Leavitt wins by knockout. I can't believe I'm picking this, but I'm taking Jordan Leavitt by second round knockout. I think eventually it's gonna be too much. I don't think Hooper's going to catch him in a submission. I think Leavitt is slightly better down there. I think people are going to, discredit the grappling game out of Jordan Leavitt because he got submitted by Paddy Pimblett. But say what you want about Pimblett. Pimblett's decent. Is he going to beat Tony Ferguson? I don't know. But, Paddy's not horrible. I know people thought he lost to Jared Gordon, which I thought he did too. But Pimblett's still, Pimblett would beat the crap out of Chase Hooper. So, I don't know why Jordan Leavitt's such a big underdog here. I'm going to take Leavitt to win by knockout. I think the odds will probably be crazy on that. But again, Hooper blocks punches with his face. I think Leavitt's going to blitz him. And I think similar to what he did to Victor Martinez, Leavitt's going to beat him. And I think Leavitt's better on the ground too. So if all else fails, Leavitt beats him on the ground too. Jordan Leavitt, second round knockout. Give me that. On to the co-main event. Good fight here between Jake Matthews and Michael Morales. Morales undefeated in the UFC, undefeated as a professional, taking on Jake Matthews, who has been around for a very long time. But Michael Morales, 15-0 as a professional, coming off his unanimous decision victory in his last fight against Max Payne Griffin. Before that, beating Adam Fugit by knockout in the third round, beat Trevin Giles before that by first round knockout, and then, of course, got his way in the UFC via the Contender Series. But that's about the Ecuadorian fighter now training out of Mexico. Here is the Australian in Jake Matthews, who has had 18 fights in the UFC, and he's only 29 years old. The guy has been around for a while, and he's been active. Coming off of a submission win over in Utah in his last fight against Darius Flowers. He went in there and submitted Flowers in the second round. Coming off that one win, dropped a fight before that to Matthew Summelsberger, and then beat Andre Fiala before that by knockout. Jake Matthews is going to come out there. He will give you a little bit of everything. Matthews will strike with you. He will grapple with you, obviously, as you saw in the Flowers fight in his last one. But primarily, it will be the striking game out of Jake Matthews, which will win him fights. However, you might see him try to switch that up a little bit in this fight, considering, again, that's how good Michael Morales is on the feet. This guy is pretty solid up there. His last fight against Max Griffin was his first in his UFC career to go to decision, but you've seen what he's been able to do to flatline guys like Trevin Giles on a main card of a pay-per-view. Yeah, they made you pay for that fight. The Fugit wins good. He beats him in Dallas, Texas. He wins in the third round. He's a minus 650 favorite for that one. He was a minus 250 favorite against Griffin. He's now looking at around minus 260 for the Jake Matthews fight. Yeah, Matthews will present a different challenge for him, though, obviously. I think Matthews is by far the best striker that he has faced. Maybe Max Griffin, though, because Griffin, went on a little bit of a run, I think, just because he had a close fight with Neil Magny that people thought he won. If he won the Magny fight, he would have been on a 5-fight winning streak over Ramiz Brahimaj, Song Kenan, Carlos Condit. Magny obviously would have been involved, and then Tim Means dropped a fight to Morales by decision. But again, I think that was Morales not wanting to get, hit with the big shot that Griffin will throw, because Griffin does throw hard, and, just taking his time, going the full 15 that he hasn't been able to do so far in the UFC, which is nothing against that. Now he's in a co-main event spot against Jake Matthews. Sure, he can get tagged. Yeah, Matthews could catch him. That could happen. I just don't think it will. I think Morales is the way better striker here. I think he's very much more technically sound than Matthews, if that makes sense, if my English is right there. But yeah, I think Morales is able to win. Again, Matthews has been able to hang in there with a lot of these guys, and sure, his downfall at times has been the grappling. The loss to Sean Brady, the loss to Anthony Rocco Martin. But when you look at the Matthews Summelsberger fight, this is why I'm picking Morales in the first place too. Summelsberger dropped him in every single round of that fight. He dropped him in the first, second, and the third. Again, say it's a bad night, sure, say what you want. But man, I think Morales is just going to be better here in this fight. I think, again, I've liked what I've seen so far in the UFC. He's able to counter really well. You saw in the Giles fight. And again, the Fugitive fight was domination. The Max Griffin fight wasn't completely domination, but he's just able to do enough to win the fight 2-1. I think Max Payne Griffin wins. You're not going to see this fight much on the ground. I think, okay, maybe you will actually. I think you're going to see Matthews definitely challenge Michael Morales on the ground, but I don't think it's going to be enough just to win the fight. I think Morales, again, will see a different type of competition in this fight, considering, again, Matthews is decent there. But 91% takedown defense rate so far in the UFC for Michael Morales. That kind of points to a Morales victory for me. I don't think Matthews, one, is going to be able to take him down, or two, even if he does get him down, I don't think Matthews holds him there. So give me Michael Morales to remain undefeated. Does he win by knockout, though? That's the question. I'm actually going to go decision. I think Morales will go a full 15 with Jake Matthews. I think as he, again, climbs the ranks here, and by the way, Morales is only 24 years old, same age as Chase Hooper is. I think Morales, as he gets older, again, will be, going more to decisions, because these guys aren't going to be as easy to knock out. Still, though, we're taking Michael Morales to win by unanimous decision. And now on to the main event. In the middleweight division, we have got Brenden Allen taking on Paul Craig. Allen, a pretty sizable favorite here in his second UFC main event. He's around -300, coming off of that win in his last fight over Bruno Silva in Jacksonville. He goes out there and submits Bruno Silva in the first round. He did what he was supposed to do to a guy who's not very good at grappling, and now he gets Paul Craig, a guy who is very good at grappling. Now, Brenden Allen's only 27 years old. He feels like he's been around for a while because he's fought a lot in the Apex, and a little bit prior to the Apex as well. He fought in the Contender Series in 2019. But this will be the 13th walk into the UFC Octagon for Brenden Allen this Saturday night. You saw the momentum get stunted when he dropped a fight to Chris Curtis. It shows you how good Curtis is when he's locked in. But after that, beats Sam Alvey, beats Jacob Malkoun, beats Christoph Jotko, who's now in the PFL, beats Andrea Muniz in a main event. It was supposed to be, that was supposed to be what? Not Derek Lewis. Who was that? That's supposed to be Ryan Spann, Nikita Kirillov. Right. Steps in the main event, submits Andrea Muniz in the third round. Again, that stopped the hype train of Muniz, because now he's lost back-to-back fights to both these guys in the main event. And then Allen beats Bruno Silva after that. He gets a guy now in Paul Craig, who, given, is a very good grappler. Paul Craig is good down there. But again, had his big fight against Volkan Oezdemir, a fight that was going to crack him into the top 10-ish of the rankings. I picked Volkan Oezdemir to win the fight. A lot of people are taking Paul Craig. Oezdemir goes out there and beats him by decision. Again, Paul Craig was not able to find that much success on the ground, and he is kind of a sitting duck when the fight is on the feet. That's kind of how Paul Craig fights go. Again, he's a really good grappler, and he's one of the few guys in mixed martial arts still, or at least at the high level of mixed martial arts, which this is, who will pull guard, because that's how good of a jiu-jitsu game he does have. However, I feel like this is a death matchup for him, because Brenden Allen is able to match him in terms of grappling. Brenden Allen's a really good grappler in his own right. This guy, again, who's 22-5 professionally, fighting out of Rufus Sport. Again, only 27 years old, and you've seen what he's been able to do in all three of his last fights. Four of his last 5 have been rear naked choke finishes. The win over Alvey, sure, say what you want, that fight was at 205 pounds, it's a weird circumstance. But the win over Jotko, the win over Muniz, and the win over Bruno Silva have all been by rear naked choke. This will be a statement victory if Brenden Allen is able to submit a guy like Paul Craig, who I believe has only been submitted once in his career. Yeah, it's going to be the one loss to Jimmy Crute where he got subbed with the Kimura. However, that's not the best pathway to victory for Brenden Allen. He can go that route, but I think, and that would be the more dominating route. But if you want really a highlight, and that's the statement, not submission, but if you want a highlight, it's going to be by knockout, because he has all the skills and all the tools to knock Paul Craig out. I think it's very likely that's going to happen because I just don't see how Paul Craig has all that much success on the ground in this fight. I don't see it. He's got a win over the former champion Jamal Hill. That's great. But I really don't know where he's going to have too much success. Because this is the problem that Paul Craig gets sometimes. The Johnny Walker fight couldn't get him down. Loses. Volkan Oezdemir couldn't get him down. Loses. Andrea Muniz, fight ended up on the ground. Paul Craig works his ground and pound and wins the fight. Sure. But Brendan Allen's better than Andrea Muniz. His striking's better than Andrea Muniz. And his wrestling and grappling apparently is better than Andrea Muniz too. Something that we didn't think was possible before their actual fight. But since we've seen that fight now, yeah, Brendan Allen is a better grappler than Andrea Muniz. Allen has been trying to call for his rematch with the champion Sean Strickland. Obviously, they fought earlier in the Apex in 2020. He wants that rematch against Strickland. Now, will Strickland still be the champion when Allen is up the ranks? I don't know. We might see that fight at some point in time. I really like Sean Strickland. I'm kind of leaning towards Dricus du Plessis in that middleweight championship fight. I just am. I think du Plessis is slightly better. I just think he is. I'm a fan of Dricus. I'm a fan of Sean Strickland, but I think du Plessis is slightly better. But again, Allen's been trying to call for that. That's not his last loss. The last loss is Chris Curtis. Now, again, he feels like he is, and I think he is. He's above Chris Curtis now in the rankings, in the point where Curtis is kind of just beneath him at this point, even though he does have the loss. And the way guys will be Brendan Allen, and I think it's something that he will see, as Allen with a win here will definitely put himself in the sort of elite of the weight class. And he put himself, if Adesanya was still champion, he'd put himself in the, well, if you got nobody else, you might as well give him the shot ranks when Adesanya was just beating everybody. But when he gets to the higher level guys, he's going to have a problem. I think Jared Cannonier is a very tough matchup for him, and I think that's likely a fight that we could see after this. Wait, well, Cannonier just tore his ACL, so maybe not. I think Allen's going to call for Whitaker after this. Seriously, look at the rankings. I don't really see anybody else. Dolidze, sure, but does that fight stylistically really favor Allen? I don't think it does. I think the much smarter call out's Robert Whitaker. It 100% is. Or if he just wants to go for it, call it Chimaev. Go do it. He's not going to get the fight, but he should. He should call it Chimaev. The fight for him is Jared Cannonier, because stylistically that fight, or not Jared Cannonier, it's Robert Whitaker. Because stylistically, sure, is that a tough matchup? Yeah, but I think it's the same style of matchup that a Cannonier would be, that a Vettori would be. And if you're going to win a fight like that against a guy who's got decent takedown defense and who is a decent striker, you might as well go for Whitaker, who's coming off of a loss to du Plessis. Who knows what Whitaker will be coming off that loss. You might as well go for it. I think that's what Allen should call it after a win. Now, given if he wins, he'll probably just hit the, I want Sean Strickland, not going to get the title shot, but I'll just take whoever the UFC gives me. It's the dumbest thing ever. Call your shot. At least get your name out there. If you know you're not going to get the championship fight, at least call for the championship fight. And if not, call it Chimaev, because they're not going to give him the fight anyway against Chimaev. Why would they do that? They're going to book Chimaev and Adesanya at UFC 300. That feels like a given. If not, they're just going to wait for Chimaev to fight the winner of Strickland and du Plessis. But you might as well call it your shot, right? That's what Allen should do. I feel like I'm not really crediting Paul Craig here much, but seriously, I don't know how Paul Craig wins. I don't know how he does. You're going to have to catch Brendan Allen in something on the ground, but I just don't think Allen's going to be there to get caught with something like that. And really, I don't think this fight's even going to hit the mat. I'll be honest with you. Brendan Allen's going to win this fight by first round knockout. He's going to keep this fight in the feet, and Brendan Allen is going to knock out Paul Craig. That's what's going to happen in this one. Again, I don't think Craig's able to get him down. And I don't think Brendan Allen's going to really engage in that, because Brendan Allen is going to see, I have such a huge advantage in the striking game. Why would I even think about letting this fight hit the mat? It's a smart strategy, because Brendan Allen can wrestle and he can grapple when he needs to do so. But in a fight like this, there's no need for that. Why test yourself against a guy like Paul Craig, who is very dangerous down there, when you can just keep this fight standing, and just dominate on the feet in a style of fight where honestly I feel like this fight's not competitive stand-up wise. Obviously, I just don't think it is. I think Brendan Allen's way better. Is he known for his striking? No. But this is a fight, again, where Brendan Allen can continue his streak of getting finishes, but also can get it done with a knockout, and it'll look really good on his little package before the fight that the UFC always shows. And it'll be a really big boost for him. Again, he should call out Whitaker. Will he get the Whitaker fight? No. I think instead they'll probably book him against Dolidze. I think that makes sense. Yeah, they'll probably book him against Dolidze, but who knows? He should call out Whitaker and hope he gets it. But folks, that will do it for our UFC Fight Night. Craig versus Brendan Allen. full card predictions here on the channel. 14 fights from the UFC Apex. No UFC next week. However, there is PFL, the PFL Championship card. We'll be talking about that one next week. Tomorrow, Bellator 301 predictions. Obviously, the main event being the ass-wrecking machine, Jason Jackson taking on Yaroslav Amosov for the undisputed Bellator welterweight championship. And then in 2 weeks with the UFC, we are back for a card from Austin, Texas in the Moody Center. Main event, great card, by the way. Main event, though, Arman Tsarukyan taking on Beneil Dariush. Co-main event, 5 rounds. Dan Hooker, Bobby Green, Khalil Roundtree Jr., Azamat Murzakanov, Rob Font, Divas Figueiredo, Sean Brady, Kelvin Gastelum. It is a loaded card. Misha Tate's on there. Clay Guida's on that card. It is a pretty solid card coming from Austin, Texas in just a couple weeks' time. So that'll be the next time we are here on the channel with UFC, but of course, coming up tomorrow, Bellator, and then next week with the PFL. So folks, thank you all for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure you like if you did enjoy the video. Make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. Folks, thank you for watching, and Mamba forever.